What is going on, everybody? My name is Tom Kelly, and this is Clean Cut Audio. If you have made it to this channel, you are clearly a pretty big audio nerd. You love podcasting, and I am so grateful to welcome you here. Something I really want to talk about today is AI. With each passing day, artificial intelligence is getting better and better at producing great sounding audio. Many people in my field, the podcast and dialogue post-production field, are feeling pretty nervous that our jobs might be taken away soon. And honestly, I feel like if we don't embrace this new technology, that might actually be what happens. Those who do not embrace disruption will eventually be killed by it. Now, I think the conversation about AI is interesting because it really serves two different kinds of people. One, there are the people who want to start a podcast and get great sounding audio without spending decades learning everything you need to know to get really amazing sounding audio. And the second group of people is people like me, those who get paid to do post-production on others' podcasts, who might utilize this new technology to make their jobs a little bit easier and maybe a little bit faster, which to me means more money. That's amazing. How could you say no to that? There are many tools that I want to talk about, but today, the one plugin suite that I want to talk about is by Accentize. This is DialogueEnhance 2 and DeRoom. So Production Expert put out this really interesting poll in listening exercises where they had really bad audio and then they had 3 different AI software try to make this audio better by restoring it, getting rid of room tone, room reverberations, resonance, all kinds of nasty stuff. And then they had a dialogue post-production editor using Isotope RX to see which of these tools or which of these operators actually handled the audio best. And what I found so interesting is that even in a blind test, Isotope RX, which is like the gold standard in any kind of post-production, actually did significantly worse in the category of de-reverberation in every single scenario. And one of the tools that was at the top of the list was DeRoom by Accentize. So I actually reached out to the company and I asked for a license so that I can create this video. And they did provide me with a free license. However, I am not being compensated in any way, nor does the company have any say over what is said in this video, and they don't have any approval rights. So this is just 100% my opinion, and I'm really excited to get into Pro Tools here and take a listen to 3 different recordings that I did. A very good recording, a pretty typical recording that anyone guesting on a podcast might give, and then like worst case scenario. And I want to see how their plugin suite, DialogueEnhance 2 and DeRoom, handles this audio. Now, full disclosure, the bedroom and the bathroom was recorded on my cell phone, so it's going to be significantly worse just by the nature of the microphone style, as well as the distance of it from my mouth. However, a lot of what we have to treat in podcasting is horrific guest audio, which I would say 99 times out of 100 is done on the laptop microphone, which is a very small diaphragm condenser microphone. So this isn't too far from real life scenarios. All right, let's get into Pro Tools here. We'll take a listen to what we got. So what we should be paying attention to is the sound of the room itself. In the studio, all you hear is my voice, just pure signal. Already in this first demo, I am recording into the Apogee Ensemble going into the Millennium. Now listen to how you can hear the space that I'm in the bedroom. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room. And then in the bathroom, the voice is almost drowned out entirely by the sound of the bathroom, the reverberations off the walls itself. Already, this is one of 2 recordings in the bathroom. What I'm hoping you'll hear is that it's really when we first load up DialogueEnhance 2, this is what we see. We see 4 different panes, and these are the 4 different tools within this production suite. It's all pretty self-explanatory, but we have noise reduction, sadly pretty necessary in most recordings, especially those that we get from guests in podcasts. We have compression, which is dynamics control, spectral correction. So if any frequencies are overwhelming or deemed to be from this software, it'll cut them out dynamically, so it'll change over time. And then loudness boost. I said it's a -16 LUF, so it's going to increase our gain to make sure that our audio is always at -16 LUFs, or we'll see whether it does or not. I'm going to make the UI a little bit bigger right in the UI scaling there, and we're going to hit play. One thing to notice, we have automatic mode. So this is going to adjust to the audio. It's going to work dynamically. And loudness boost, if you hit the magnifying glass, that will also be in automatic mode, and you'll see it moving up and down, trying to make sure my audio is always at -16 LUFS. Already in this first demo, I am recording into the Apogee Ensemble going into the Millennia STT1 on a Shure SM7B. What I'm hoping to test here is what would be a pro level recording. This really should not need any noise reduction. There shouldn't be any room tone because I am surrounded by... All right, so this is what we're getting out of this plugin. We don't need 12 decibels of noise reduction, so I'll just go ahead and turn that down. We've got some pretty hard compression. This is a little bit more than I think is necessary. So if we want to make any adjustments, we can turn it off of automatic mode, and it'll give us that curve there. I'm going to set my threshold a little bit higher because I just thought it was doing a little bit too much work, and maybe increase the ratio so that it's not catching as much in the threshold there, but anything that does go over is getting a little bit more treatment. Now, I thought this was interesting as cutting a lot of 2 kilohertz on my voice. One of the biggest criticisms of the SM7B is that there isn't enough of that range. There's not enough. I guess we could do the presence boost on the back of this thing, but maybe not enough 7K or anything like that. It's kind of a dark microphone. I expected it to be cutting more of that, maybe 250, 330 range. It's cutting 2K. I don't know. Interesting. Well, we can play with that. And loudness boost, it is adding 11 decibels of gain. That all looks pretty good. Let's take a listen again when I adjust the threshold a little bit more. And again, you can turn it on automatic mode or you can turn it off. It'll keep the settings that it applied, and then you can further tweak it from there, which I think is a really great feature. So let's take a listen again. Already in this first demo, I am recording into the Apogee Ensemble going into the Millennia STT1 on a Shure SM7B. What I'm hoping to test here is what would be a pro level recording. So we can also do the same thing with the spectral correction. It can either be in automatic mode and work dynamically, or you can turn it off and make further adjustments. This is going for an even darker, more like broadcasty kind of sound, which isn't typically my cup of tea. I like to be a little more mid-range focused, but we're just going to ride it out and see what happens. I think it's pretty interesting. Same thing with loudness boost. We can turn the automatic mode off and just have it boost 10 decibels. I'm not really boosting my signal this early in the chain, but if you are trying to make a, decent sounding podcast, this is the only plugin you want to run, you might be out the door ready to go with just this. There is something that I do want to address that is something I don't necessarily love about this plugin. I'm going to reset it here. We're going to get the loudness boost up to -16, and I'm going to put it in automatic mode. And I'm really trying to test it out with this portion of the audio here because this is pretty typical of most people in a podcast. I explain it in the example, so no need to say it twice. This should be about as good as a recording can get. However, I do want to try to push DialogueEnhance 2 to its limits. So what I'm going to do here is pretty typical of a lot of people on podcasts. They start the sentence like really, really strong, and then by the end of it, they're really, really trailing off, and it gets almost like too whisper. And I want to see if the auto gain does a good job of leveling this out without it sounding too artificial, too fake, what have you. So what happened there is I purposefully trailed off my sentence, and pretty typical. However, the thing with loudness boost on the automatic mode is, one, I think it's too slow to actually sound very natural, and two, it's way too aggressive. If you kind of trail off to a whisper and you're having this software make sure it's crushed at -16 LUFS no matter what, and you really don't preserve any dynamics whatsoever, the whisper starts to sound like a scream. It's a really interesting thing with dynamics, where if you mix a whisper and a scream to be the same loudness on the output, the whisper is going to sound way louder. So I don't like having loudness boost on automatic because I think it is too aggressive. I wish you can kind of dial in the range a little bit to say like, hey, don't go plus or minus this much. And it's just too slow where it doesn't react fast enough. So I don't like it being on automatic. If you need to add some gain later on, sure. If it were me, I would just turn it off and I would do it all on the fader here, something that I can see, something that I'm pretty readily in control of. However, I think it does a pretty good job. I mean, I wouldn't cut that much of 2K. So if you don't like the decision that it made, it gives you a good starting point. You know, it's rolling off some of those very low ends, which is a good decision. I don't like as much sparkle in my voice as a lot of people do, so like I don't disagree with that move. It's like not even a 1 decibel, and mellowing out some of the nasalness, some of the harshness. That's great. I love everything that it did there. So let's see what it does with a bad recording. We're going to be a little quicker with these since we kind of know how the UI works. We're going to see how it deals with the bedroom. And then what I'm really excited about is we're going to test out DeRoom 2, because this has so quickly become my go-to de-reverberation tool for pretty much any scenario. So let's take a listen to this bad recording. Again, I'll level out my fader, and I'm going to try to dial this in. So I'm going to turn it on automatic mode just to see kind of what it needs to get to a better level, and then I'll turn it off and leave it static. So let's take a listen here. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room, 4 mostly empty walls. This is pretty typical of what a lot of guests on podcasts would be sending the host. An untreated room, approximately 10 foot by 10 foot. This is really typical rooms. All right, so before, I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room. After, I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room. It's keeping the dynamics more under control. Not a whole lot to cut here, but what I'm really excited about, again, is this DeRoom 2. And all we have here is sensitivity and reduction. So how sensitive is this tool to identifying what is reverberation, what is room tone? And then once it identifies that, how much do we want to reduce it by? So let's take a listen to just the factory default settings. 50% sensitivity, infinite reduction. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room, 4 mostly empty walls. This is pretty typical of what a lot of guests on podcasts would be sending the host. An untreated room, 10 foot by 10 foot, essentially. That is way better. I mean, seriously, if you throw this plugin on a reverberant recording, leave it around 50, play with it a little bit, but I usually turn the reduction. The worse it is, the more you're going to need, but leave it around like between 15 and 20. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So that's like pretty good. You don't need to know anything in order to use this tool. This is so amazing. It's so much easier to use than any of the other de-reverb tools that I've used anyway. And if we think like maybe it needs a little bit more, what we can do here is rather than do one blast in one instance, we can just copy this down here. And now we're running 2 instances of DeRoom. We can do less on each pass, but cumulatively get a lot more out of it. And usually running 2 small passes of anything is actually much more transparent than running one huge pass of any tool. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. So this is my kids' room, 4 mostly empty walls. This is pretty typical of what a lot of guests on podcasts would be sending the host. An untreated room, 10 foot by 10 foot. So if you want to take this further, right, if you have a little bit more knowledge of equalization, what we can do here is identify the resonance of this room and just reduce it. And I think we're going to get a pretty good signal out of this. I'm recording in the nursery in my house. Mostly empty walls. This is pretty typical of what a lot of guests on podcasts would be sending the host. An untreated room, 10 foot by 10 foot. This is really typical room sound that you're going to get in a recording. I'll take it a step further and actually open the window out over our porch. So we'll hear some traffic sounds. We'll hear some birds chirping. And I want to hear how Accentize will do with this noise floor. It's beautiful. I'd actually hate to get rid of the bird sounds. All right. So DialogueEnhance 2 instances of DeRoom 2 and Pro Q3. I'd maybe throw a de-esser on there, but like, that's better than a lot of podcasts I hear. And for not really knowing too much about audio, I think you can pretty easily get away with just shipping this dialogue, just running it through Enhance 2 in DeRoom. It's not perfect. You know, there's some things that I would still do to it. But again, we're trying to empathize with the absolute newbie. Doesn't know a whole lot about podcasting. I think this is a lot of what DialogueEnhance 2, what their target market is. However, DeRoom 2 is just one of the greatest things that has ever hit my signal chain. All right, so we're going to zero this out. And we're going to hear how this deals with the bathroom recording. We'll get familiar with how this sounded again.
Alrighty, this is one of 2 recordings in the...
Let's just see what happens.
Alrighty, this is one of 2 recordings in the bathroom. What I'm hoping you'll hear is that it's really reverberant. You can really hear the space that I'm in. And the room itself is actually, from my perspective anyway, louder than the sound of my voice, which makes it really unintelligible. This is going to be a difficult job for DeRoom. And to make the job slightly harder, I have a fan running in the background, kind of just a constant drone of noise, which we can listen to here.
All right, this is rough. Like, this is not something I would want to publish in an episode. I would probably do a little bit more. Like, obviously, no one should have a recording that bad to begin with. I don't think any plugin is really going to help too much with it. But let's see what DeRoom does. Again, I'm just going to go back to the factory settings, hit play.
Alrighty, this is one of 2 recordings in the bathroom. What I'm hoping you'll hear is that it's really reverberant. You can really hear the space that I'm in. And the room itself is actually, from my perspective anyway, louder than the sound of my voice, which makes it really unintelligible. This is going to be a difficult job for DeRoom.
Let's hear all this noise here. Let's hook it up with a little bit of EQ. I did this beforehand. I'm trying to get rid of some of the S's and trying to take like notch more of that room out, and we'll hear after.
The job slightly harder. I have a fan running in the background, kind of just a constant drone of noise, which we can listen to here. So we'll see how the denoise does with the DeRoom. This is a pretty rough recording. This is not something I'd be thrilled about getting from one of my clients. To make the job slightly harder, I have a fan running in the background, kind of just a constant drone of noise, which we can listen to here. Job slightly harder, I have a fan running in the background, kind of just a constant drone of noise.
All right, so it's not great. Right? There are limits on what AI can handle. Like I said, no one should get a recording that bad. I mean, that is just horrible. But I have heard of people recording in a bathroom because they heard that if you're in a smaller room, there's less reverberation, and that is so false. There might be a shorter reverberation time, but as the room gets smaller, that reverberation starts to get louder and louder. And we're hearing that here. The sound of the bathroom was louder than my actual voice. That was really bad. But if you go to the bedroom, I think this does a really good job. Like, this audio here is the worst that anyone should ever be turning in if they are recording a podcast. It shouldn't get worse than this. And we can hear the before and after. I think it's pretty good results. And if you're someone who is really interested in making a podcast sound pretty good, but you don't want to go through my 8-hour course on equalization, or you don't want to go that far down the rabbit hole, I think this plugin suite by Accentize, I have, it's not something that I'm going to use in my signal chain as far as DialogueEnhance 2 goes. I think I can do a better job by using analog-based tools and the 14 years of experience that I have in audio engineering. I think I could do a slightly better job, but that's just me. This plugin is not made for me. It's made for people maybe like you who don't know a whole lot about audio, don't really want to learn everything, but still want to provide a good sounding podcast. So if that's you, and if you're interested, you can check out DialogueEnhance 2 by Accentize. You can download a free trial. I get no commission on any sales, so buy it or don't. I literally do not care. However, it's good to know that tools like this are out there. And if it's helpful to you, that's amazing. And more than anything, I couldn't recommend DeRoom 2 enough. I've been using it on so many of my productions. Anything that has less than perfect room sound, which is most things, these days are getting a touch of DeRoom 2, and I think it's doing a fabulous job. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like me to do more plugin demos, please let me know in the comments. If there are any tools you're interested in learning about, I'll see if I can get familiar with it and make a video on it, teaching you how to use it, if I like it, if I'd recommend it or not. I want to let you know I've got some really exciting news. On April 27th, something I've been working on for almost a year is going to be dropping on the internet. And if you'd like to be the first to know what it is, you can sign up to my mailing list at cleancutaudio.com/contact. I almost never send emails, so I will not spam you, but you'll be the first to know what this huge secret project is. I'm so excited about it. Feel free to check it out, cleancutaudio.com/contact. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come out of this video knowing a little bit more about how to make an even better sounding podcast. Thank you all so much. Bye.